Is there a great game being played in the Northeast?
I have no doubt.
Do you think we are on course?
74% reduction in insurgency-related incidents. There have been major accords that have been signed.
There was something which happened in Myanmar in 2021. Then suddenly there was Manipur. And then there was Bangladesh.
Have people manipulated it? Have they seen opportunities? Will they continue to manipulate the fault lines? Yes.
What about Rakhine Corridor?
So who are we doing this for? Are we looking at a next generation that intrinsically feels that Bangladesh's secular fiber is no longer needed?
Since we are talking Northeast and we can't let go of Bangladesh.
It's all up in the air.
It's a point of no return.
Soft power alone cannot achieve what a country like India wants to achieve.
Hello and welcome to Cutting Edge, the show at the very intersection of technology, geopolitics, and defense and aerospace. Today we have Dr. Rami Desai with us. We will be speaking about the Indian quest in the Northeast, looking northeastwards and the Act India policy as to how it transcends in 2025. Dr. Rami Desai is a very, very well-known expert on the Northeastern affairs. She is a theologian. She is a practitioner, not only a theorist. She's an author and she's a distinguished fellow at the India Foundation here in New Delhi. To top it all, Rami and I are part of the same task force, and it's such a pleasure having you on the show, Rami. What a pleasure to get you here and speak about Northeast, which is your forte.
Anurag, it is absolutely a privilege for me to be on your show, and I'm very happy that we could fix our times and get me here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. So let me start straight away, with Northeast. Now, Northeast, is an area which a lot of people are not very aware about. And you've been there on ground, in and out, all the way. So what exactly is the geography of Northeast? What are the tribes in the Northeast that we need to look at before we start going into a little more serious things about Northeast?
Anurag, you're quite right. I think the Northeast is complex for the layman.
Oh, yeah.
And less so now than it was before. When I started traveling there about 20 years ago, it used to be very alien to an average person that somebody wanted to travel there as well. Also, there was a lack of connectivity. So you didn't really have the easy connectivity you have now. You have railways, you have flights, you have airports. In 2014, we had about 6 or 7 airports. Now we have 16.
16?
Yeah. So,
wow.
There is that difference that's happened, which also means that your air tickets are cheaper, hotels have come up. So things have changed. But yes, it has suffered from geographical isolation as well as psychological isolation,
right.
Which I think is worse than actually geographical isolation.
Of course.
Geographical isolation is, it's tough to get there. Psychological is, are these people a part of the larger mainstream?
Yes.
Or are they spoken about in narrative as the mainstream or as counter to the mainstream?
True.
And that is really problematic, was really problematic. I think what has happened with the Northeast is 2 things. When I say geography, I mean the way it's been cut. You have the Siliguri Corridor, or also called the Chicken's Neck, which is a 22-kilometer wide landmass. That itself, when you look at the geography of India, gives you a sense of it being really distant.
Absolutely.
Also it becomes, if I may say so, and I choose my words very carefully, it does prove to be problematic in the sense of vulnerabilities.
Right.
When I say psychological isolation is because when we talk about the Northeast, we think of it as completely tribal,
right.
Which it is. But what are we looking at tribes as in terms of the lenses that we look at it? Why should it be alien to us? When in India's history, civilizational history, tribes have been a part of our mainstream consciousness.
Of course.
So suddenly, where does this alienation come from? Or where this thought process that, it's tribal, so it's different? Now, obviously, and I'll only take another minute to explain this to you, though it's a very, very complex topic. But if you notice, it was in the 70s and the 80s when a lot of Bollywood movies would also represent tribes. Tribes were represented as uncivilized, as groups of people who had no civilization, who had their own ways of life which was very different to what
The
people in
mainstream
urban
was.
cities
Yes.
followed. Also, they were almost caricatures of themselves. They were never, there was no sophistication that was accorded to them.
True.
And that is very representative of how our society started segregating communities.
Right.
And that proves to be a problem for us because sometimes we still think of it like that. We don't understand the sophisticated administrative systems, the sophisticated political systems, sophisticated cultural systems that these tribal communities have. We know very little about it. Our education is to blame. Our lack of political will is to blame. Though those things are changing now.
Okay.
But in a nutshell, the Northeast suffers from this sort of alienation or two fronts, like I mentioned.
But then tell me, in the last round, say 10 years or so, has this entire divide been bridged in some manner or the other? Or we are still in the old?
See, there are two levels again of looking at it.
Right.
Has it been bridged for people like you and me who study these areas,
Yes.
who understand it deeply, who study communities, societies, anthropologists? Sure, because we realize that what we've been looking at or studying tribes as is a very Western lens.
Okay.
When we don't actually have a word called tribe, it's an English word.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
We don't have a word called indigenous.
Yes.
What you are essentially saying when you use the word tribe, when you use the word indigenous tribe, is that we are outsiders. That's where the insider-outsider.
So there's no inclusivity.
There's no inclusivity.
Yeah,
it's all,
obviously. Yeah.
this has been, if you look at it from an internal Indian civilizational point of view, communities have been continuous. And our diversity is what has been very natural to us. Whereas
Yes.
when you look at a Western concept, it's uniformity. That has always been an agenda, whether it's religious uniformity,
Yes.
in terms of when the colonialists came, they brought the missionaries with them, or is it educational conformity? Whereas, old civilizations like ours and, other older civilizations don't work like that. There's always diversity that
Correct.
has worked in a larger sense.
Right.
So I think, yes, people who are now looking at subjects, not just anthropology, sociology, but also public intellectuals have started looking at these topics, these terms from an insider's point of view.
Okay.
But for the layman still, this is difficult. These concepts are difficult to understand. If I tell you that it was only in the first census that tribe was brought in as a separate category.
Oh, really?
Because there weren't any categories
There were
before that.
categories, yeah. There were categories.
So, and it was in the second census that a religion was accorded to them, which was called animism.
Animism.
We don't have anything called animism.
Yeah,
We worship everything
True.
as well as any other community in India.
Right.
So I think things are changing. I think one of the major reasons for things to change is political will, at least in the context of the Northeast, because there has been a change in dispensation which has put the Northeast very central to its foreign policy.
Yes.
To its Northeastern policy,
Yes.
which I'm sure we'll talk about later in the sense of the Act East policy.
So, that's some great points, actually. I never thought of this, from the census point of view and various issues insofar as, the tribalism is concerned and how Bollywood, it's something which is actually tickled my brain today, what you've mentioned. But see, you look at Northeast today. So what happens to Northeast is it's been conflicted in some manner or the other. So there have been numerous accords which have taken place. Some have stood the test of time. Somebody has actually done what was supposed to be done. Some have withered away in whichever manner they have been. But tell me, in this, when we look at our Act East policy, which you just mentioned, do you think we are on course or we have lost our ways in some place or in some manner or the other?
Look, as you have called me a practitioner, so let me bring in that knowledge that
Absolutely.
I have. When I started traveling, and I was very young, early 2000s, I started traveling, the sense of segregation was immense in terms of there was a complete disparity in development.
Okay.
There was a sense of danger all the time because of the kind of conflict that was there.
Okay.
Some of the oldest running insurgencies have started from the Northeast. NSCN, Ulfa was one of the most formidable groups. We had to be really careful when we were traveling to remote areas. There was bad public transportation. There was no place to stay. I really do believe, and I say this without any qualms, that the present political dispensation came in with a concerted effort to change these things, because they realized the value of the Northeast, not just in sense of our civilizational value, but also in the sense of the security part of it. And therefore, development was accelerated to an extent that within every 5 years, and I go there a couple of times a year, but every 5 years I could see cities change completely.
Oh, you've seen that?
I've seen a complete, there are areas where you could never go that you can go to. There's I think 74% reduction in insurgency related incidents.
Yes.
There have been major accords that have been signed that have brought peace, not just amongst communities that wanted more autonomy or semi-autonomy, but also among states that had certain boundary conflicts.
Right.
Things that could have been addressed decades ago.
Right.
There's been, like I said, look at the airport construction, look at the road constructions. I think this is the fastest construction of highways that has ever taken place in the history.
Yes.
And it's happening today. So these things have made a huge difference. We've started, and when there is political will and when areas are made accessible to people, automatically the rest of the country takes it upon itself to give it the representation and the importance that it deserves.
Yes.
I think today more than ever, our North Indians, South Indians, Indians across the country eating more Northeastern cuisine than they ever did before. We have complete hubs in Delhi.
Oh yes,
that have and every we call it Northeast. We call it a region. It's not a region. There are 7 states. States have different cultures, values, communities, tribes, traditions, cuisines, and therefore you'll find even a restaurant that say Bodo cuisine. There'll be Assamese cuisine, there'll be so on and so forth, So there's been that identification and that respect accorded. And that's all happened because it's become a part of your mainstream consciousness. Which wasn't there. Yeah. So I do believe things are changing. Now, when you come to the Act East policy, hugely important policy, because it really makes use of what is naturally important to us and what we can naturally access, which is through our northeastern borders, we can access, the rest of the world.
Oh, yes, of course.
And India sits in this very unique geographical location where we're kind of like, I look at it like in the center of the world, So we are almost like a balancing power.
Yes.
We can look towards the west, but we can look towards the east as well. And we have also civilizational, cultural connections. Now, this comes with a little caveat, is that I do think that soft power has its own importance, but soft power alone cannot achieve what a country like India wants to achieve in terms of, being a regional power, bringing stability to the region. And I think, therefore, it's very incumbent on us to ensure that there is security and safety in our neighborhood. Therefore, we also have a neighborhood first policy where,
of course,
right? But yes, there have been certain impediments in terms of the conflict in Myanmar, the political instability in Bangladesh. We've seen certain fault lines being manipulated. It's not just manipulated from within Myanmar in terms of insurgencies or weaponization of groups there, but also from, and what I believe, also from external factors, international players,
of course,
who have stakeholdings in these areas and are also thinking about the future.
So while we are looking at this, what you just mentioned, and, I have this strange, theory that there is no basing in South Asia now, post the exodus from Afghanistan. And there's a great game being played insofar as South Asia is concerned. So there was something which happened in Myanmar in 2021. And we are not even talking about Suu Kyi and everybody. What all happened in 2020. We know much more than anybody else. Then suddenly there was Manipur, and then there was Bangladesh last year. You think there is a pattern to it, or it's just random? It is just a domino kind of a thing, and it's happening just the way it had to.
Look, the genesis of the conflict in Myanmar happened because of their internal problems. Tatmadaw coming into power did not serve the West or any other countries so as to say any benefits. They've always had, there's been a prolonged difference of opinion, actually, even with China, which is right now a supporter. But the Tatmadaw and the Chinese never were on a great footing to begin with. But even General Aung himself was never on good terms with China, let alone the West. So the genesis of the conflict happened on its own. However, when you put these situations together, have people manipulated it? Yes.
Okay.
Has there been, have they seen opportunities? Yes.
All right.
And will they continue to manipulate the fault lines? Yes. And I think the problem that happens here more often than not is that we like to look at things in a very singular fashion.
Right.
So if you're looking at the conflict in Myanmar, we're looking at the conflict in Myanmar as to what's happening internally.
Right.
If you're looking at Bangladesh, typically an expert in Bangladesh may not understand Myanmar and vice versa.
So both are not interconnected.
They are interconnected, and that is where the lack of scholarship comes in. Because unless you have an expertise in all of these areas, can you then only join pieces together?
Yes.
If you're looking at it singularly.
Yes.
Now, I'll give you an example. We all spoke, and you and me spoke about it at one of our meetings also of the humanitarian corridor. Now, when you look at the humanitarian corridor, somebody who only understands Bangladesh will say, oh, it's for the Rohingyas.
Oh, yes, of course.
Right? Now, somebody who's looking at Myanmar also will say it's not just for the Rohingyas. Rohingyas are an excuse to get into Myanmar to be able to potentially cause some sort of a rift between the Arakanis.
Right.
Because, if you enter Arakan, and Arakan's one of the most formidable ethnic armed organization right now, if you want a foothold there, you'd have to split them.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Possible?
It's at this point it isn't, because they're a very mature sort of organization in terms of they understand the politics that is being played. They understand their young leadership. They've played their cards really well. And I'm sure they are geared up for dangers like this. But is there potential? Of course, there's always potential for a split, if somebody knows how to play their cards well. If a mature, sophisticated organization like NSCN could be split,
yes,
why can't Arakan? If you look at even the Chin groups in Chin state, there's a huge amount of fragmentation between them. It's not just between two groups, but there are some 15 groups under one group, 15 groups. So this happens. So only if you understand all of the contiguous regions, will you understand what is happening? And it's not just about this area. It's about any area now. You have to have a larger landscape that you're studying.
True.
So I think that is now becoming more and more important. However, Anurag, that is also very difficult to do because, and I will be critical of scholarship because I think we've become used to mediocrity. So therefore, we want to become experts in 6 months. And we want to give commentary because now commentary has become so
it's essential.
Easy. Yeah, and it's become easy, with the amount of, you have podcasts, you have debates, you have interviews, you have solo people doing their own, so commentary has become easy. It's become a good way to get your face out there.
And point across.
Yet, one doesn't realize that it's very nuanced. What is happening is very nuanced and you have to study a lot.
Oh, yes.
So, yes, I think there is a potential pattern in it. I think, having said that, we have to study and understand it all together, not just singularly.
So, not singularly. So, I segue to the next question to you, Rami. See, what happens is that now, the famous elections are likely to be held in Myanmar. I mean, we both smiled, and I believe the Janta says that the first phase is somewhere around 26th of December, and the remainder phases will be, given to the world later, with Sochi still in custody. What do you think this election means for India, the region, and do you think it's likely to bring in some peace there, or it's going to be status quo?
Look, the elections I've been writing on the situation post 2021.
Oh, you've written a wonderful piece. I mean, and everybody, all our viewers, if you've not read that piece, what Rami has written for the India Foundation, please read it. It's outstanding on Myanmar.
Thank you very much. But I've always said that elections will happen. It's a matter of time.
Right.
Now, why will it happen?
Right.
It will happen because the Tatmadaw cannot continuously stay in power.
Right.
We must understand the constitution. The Tatmadaw anyway has 25% of the seats in the parliament, right? Yeah. So they anyway have power, and they hold some of the biggest departments.
Yeah.
So it's not that they need the power. They need a government in place that technically works with them and doesn't make any moves for absolute majority so as to dislodge them.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons that analysts have said that the coup happened is because it's alleged that there was election rigging. Wherein more votes were cast than actually registered voters. This is an allegation. Who knows what is right, what isn't? One has to read between the lines. But that made the Tatmadaw nervous.
Right.
Because if they came in with full majority, it would be possible that the Tatmadaw itself would be dislodged from the power that they hold.
Yes.
And therefore, there was a coup, but the basis of the coup was that there was election rigging. Now, the Tatmadaw is not really interested in controlling this. They have a military-backed party called USDP as well.
Of course.
They are going to go ahead and do elections in 110 townships. There are 330. Give or take a few of them, depending how much they can accelerate. The offensive is still on. We, as not citizens of Myanmar, can only be outside observers and analyze this in a very detached way. Now, what's going to happen is that the ethnic armed organizations are going to maybe increase the offensive against the Tatmadaw.
Okay.
So that fight is going to continue. Tatmadaw will come into power, elections will happen in the areas that the census happened last year.
Right.
And where they can have elections in terms of where there is relative peace.
Right.
Now, that is going to give them international legitimacy.
Will it?
Absolutely. So it will give them international legitimacy because once you have done elections, who's going to say what? They're going to say, "Theek hai, at least those areas people have voted." And those are major areas. Now, let me also tell you, when we talk about territorial control,
right,
that, EOs have more territory than the Tatmadaw, one of the other counter arguments is, what does territory mean if there aren't any people?
Means nothing.
So if you say 50% territory is with ethnic armed organization and 50% territory is with Tatmadaw, you also have to take into account where is the population.
Yeah.
At this point, it seems like there's more population under the Tatmadaw controlled areas because they have administration and governance. Ethnic armed organization areas, one of the biggest problems there is there's no electricity. There's no employment. Kaise aayega aapke paas?
That is
there's no governance.
Very true. Very
right?
true.
So what will people do? People will move. People will migrate.
Yes.
By certain estimates, right now it is said that there are over 4 million people who've migrated to Yangon itself from other areas. Obviously, other migrations have happened into Thailand and other places. 4 million.
How does that happen?
They've because there's nothing to eat, there's nothing to do, there's no schools are not functioning, there's no electricity. What are they going to do there?
Right.
Now, also people say, look, they can eat whatever, they are agriculturalists and this and that. For agriculture, you need seeds.
Yes.
Where is that going to come from? So, Benji, these are, and also look, people don't want to live in bare sustenance, right?
I agree.
They need basic, they need some amount of basic sustenance in terms of education for their children or electricity or some amount of development. So people have moved, people have migrated. Now, you can argue that, okay, it's not 4 million, it's 2 million. That's not what I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with the fact that they're migrating out of the EU-controlled areas into the Tatmadaw-controlled areas or to other countries. The migration itself tells you that it is problematic. I do feel elections will happen. I do think that the ASEAN countries will accept it, leave maybe one or two of them. It's going to give the Tatmadaw honorable exit, so as to say that a political party, even if it's a military-backed party, I'm putting my bet on USDP, they will come into power. NLD, Aung San Suu Kyi-led NLD, has not registered, and therefore they cannot take part in the elections. But there are 52 or 54 parties, political parties, that are taking part.
Right. So, and how do you see India looking at this election?
Look, India has always engaged with all stakeholders. And I think that is our best bet, because for us, we do not internally interfere with anybody's internal problems.
Absolutely.
That's never been how we work.
Yes.
And therefore, that's also garnered us a lot of goodwill, because, we give humanitarian aid where it's needed.
Yes.
We engage where our national interests are priority for us.
True.
But beyond that, what happens internally is your decision. Now, what's going to happen is India is going to continue engagement. We are going to finish our Kaladan multimodal project as well, which I think it was only last month that the Minister of Shipping, Mr. Sonowal, said that he said by 2026 we would complete that little patch, the road patch that is remaining up till Mizoram, which tells you that even in the ethnic armed controlled areas, because that is Arakan control, we are working there. Because our national interest, the amount of money that we put in, how important that alternate route is to us, our national interest is priority to us.
And safely.
And safely only happens is when you have goodwill on ground.
Absolutely.
We were Operation Brahma. We were first responders. Of course, China was also there. But we were first responders. Not only did we send relief material, but we sent our people on the ground.
Yes.
I think that gave us a lot of goodwill. And that's typically what India's diplomacy has been about, whether it is, whether it is here, whether it is Sri Lanka during the financial crisis. We've always been first responders. So that has gotten us a lot of goodwill, Anurag. And I think that will continue. Sure, it will take us a little time, to get things back to normal, which we can't alone. Myanmar has to find solutions to its own problems. So whether it's the Asian Trilateral Highway, that all is going to take a little time. But I'm sure Myanmar will also find solutions.
Oh, yes, of course they will. Kaladan is something which I wanted to ask you. You've already, given a great expose on Kaladan. So there's another thing which I needed to ask you. What about Rakhine Corridor? Anything on Rakhine? That's
the humanitarian corridor that we spoke about. It's not happening as of now.
Okay.
It's not happening as of now. And I think the reason it's not happening is because it was a Western-backed initiative. As it was announced, and you just have to read my articles, and I've listed how it happened step by step. There was an international organization that first brought it up, said we want a corridor so that we can pass on humanitarian aid.
True.
Of course, many a times humanitarian corridors have been used.
Yeah, they've been weaponized, actually. Literally weaponized.
Absolutely.
So many times.
And these are very volatile areas.
Of course.
It was also known that very deftly was the NSA of Bangladesh appointed. He was, mind you, previously the head of the Department of Rohingya Affairs.
Oh, really?
Minority and Rohingya Affairs.
Oh.
And he was appointed as National Security Advisor just when the army chief was out of the country, which is a very unusual thing to happen.
The present guy?
Yes. So it was a very unusual thing to happen. And immediately after that, this was announced.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it seems like there was orchestration.
Yeah.
And for me, the questions range from, you want to have a humanitarian corridor, you want to pass on aid.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it need to be via Bangladesh? Number two, your humanitarian corridor, has it been accepted by the Arakanis?
I don't think so.
Does the majority of Bangladeshi population accept it? Also, can an interim government take a decision like this? because this has to deal with national security and sovereignty of the
A
nation.
sovereign nation has
Absolutely.
to take a decision
So
on such
is this
things.
in the Yunus-led interim government's mandate to be able to take a decision like this?
Yeah.
So these questions come up and you wonder, why the hurry? However, because there was a big hue and cry from within, and not just, it was not just people like me who were saying that this is going to be misused, but it was even people from inside Bangladesh, including the army chief, the BNP, the opposition, that said that no, you can't take a decision like this, and we are going to be used for ulterior motives. And therefore, I think the West essentially realized that this is going to give them, there's a lot of backlash, it's going to give them a bad name, and it's best to back off. From my understanding, the Arakans also, the AA also objected to it.
It was but natural.
They don't want, why do they want people coming in?
No, not at all. Not at all.
And if you were talking about repatriation of the Rohingyas, because this is what the foundation of this entire...
Absolutely.
Do the Rohingyas want to go back? They're not interested. Now, they've been away since 2016 or something. Now, there's a generation that's gone by.
True.
Now, they're not welcomed in Arakan.
Yes.
There is nothing there because it's a conflict area.
Yes, absolutely.
So, why the hell does anybody want to go back? Nobody wants to go back. So, who are we doing this for? We're not doing this for them. And if that is the kind of concern that people have, then I think the West has a responsibility to take them as well.
True that. The West has a responsibility to take them as well. So, while, we just spoke about, this entire, humanitarian corridor, whatever it is called, I now come back to, Bangladesh, since we are talking Northeast and we can't let go of Bangladesh, although it's not a topic in itself. One fine day, I'll sit down with you and discuss more on that. But, I bring to your notice this new statement by the new Bangladesh Army Chief, Zaman, who strikes a rather reconciliatory note when he says that we need to be celebrating Janmashtami together and, things are going to be looking good and all of that. And this is at a time when Yunus says that, there'll be elections as and when they happen, I think next year. So what do you make out of this? Do you think there's something good going to be happening, or it's business as usual?
Look, I think personally, the Mohammad Yunus-led interim government has announced this to appease people, but he's not notified it. So the elections have not been notified.
Right.
So unlike what is happening in Myanmar, where the census has happened, as they said the census will happen, elections, dates have come out, the phases have come out, nothing is moved here. I think when the army chief said this, he said this at the Dhakeshwar temple.
Dhakeshwar, yeah.
Right? I think that was a message.
Right.
To the minorities.
It was?
I think it was a message to the minorities because he is at that temple. However, having said that, the army chief has been somebody who's been more moderate than what we have seen, post the fall of Sheikh Hasina's regime. We've seen the kind of groups that have come up, the people that have come up. So I think he's always tried to balance things, and it's a good message to go out. I think he's also trying to contain the radical forces. It would be the worst thing in the world for a military to be radicalized, or the radical forces in a military to come up. So I think to have a moderate voice is very, very important, especially at this stage in Bangladesh. What worries me about Bangladesh, see, these statements can be made. Everybody wants to counter the other person and so on and so forth, and, have their own leverage. How much it has an impact on ground is a different thing. Now, as far as I'm concerned, what has really concerned me is that when these protests happened, and we know a part of it was orchestrated when the USAID financials came out, we know that there was a certain amount of funding that came from there. We know that there were sanctions that were put before Sheikh Hasina's fall. The right noises were made. There was a call for free and fair elections. Though nobody's calling for that right now, but there was a call for free and fair elections, so on and so forth. So we know that there was a certain level of orchestration, but who did they orchestrate? It was the youth. And that is what concerns me, Anurag, is that are we looking at a next generation that intrinsically feels that Bangladesh's secular fiber is no longer needed.
Yeah.
With the fall of Mujibur Rahman's statues, the burning of his house,
Very sad. Very
this
sad.
to me indicated that there is a large proportion, and we love to say that no, there isn't, but there is a certain influential portion of Bangladesh that does not believe in the secular fiber that it did once upon a
You
time.
feel so?
Well, why would Mujibur was considered as a
Bangla
great
Bandhu.
symbol.
Yeah, great symbol.
A great symbol. The liberation war was seen as something as, reclaiming your own identity.
Yes,
And
yes.
today, what do we see? We see a great amount of camaraderie and trust building happening between Pakistan and Bangladesh. We know for a fact that Rohingya militant groups are being brought under an umbrella and are being trained by the ISI. It's called the Four Brotherhood Alliance.
Of course. I was just coming to that, actually.
So we are seeing all of this. For the first time, they've shown the kind of confidence in Pakistan by saying, "Oh, the consignments coming in from Pakistan don't need a customs check any longer."
It's not a very happy situation, and
it's not at all. And I do firmly believe that once a country is radicalized, it's very difficult, nearly impossible to de-radicalize it.
De-radicalization, I think, Rami, what you also, write also is, it's next to impossible, actually. It's a point of no return, frankly. What you've said is absolutely to the point. But, while we are also speaking about this Four Brotherhood Alliance and all of that, there are those ethnically armed organizations, EAOs in Myanmar. Anything on that? Something's coming up there, or...
See,
it's just loose.
See, they're highly weaponized.
Right.
Of course, there was the loose umbrella identity, the National Unity Government.
Yes.
That was brought together post the 2021 coup to bring the EOs under them.
Correct.
Sure, ideologically, the enemy is the same, which is the Tatmadaw. But do they have the same political roadmap? No, they don't.
Okay.
Was every major EO a part of the NUG? No. Arakan Army was not a part of the NUG. MNDA was not. MNDA and Tang, they're a part of the Three Brotherhood Alliance. They were not a part of the NUG. So some of the big guys were not a part of the NUG.
Right.
Worse than that is that the NUG has not been able to, in my assessment alone, and I could be wrong here, but what I feel is that the NUG has not been able to pivot a leader of the same caliber and somebody who grasps the imagination of people like Aung San Suu Kyi.
Right.
There isn't a singular figurehead like that any longer.
There's nobody, yeah.
And if you don't have leadership or singular figurehead like that, it's extremely difficult to bring everybody together.
Yeah, galvanize people.
Galvanize people have the same political roadmap.
Absolutely,
Now, when you go and ask, and I've met the EOs, and some of them are fine gentlemen, and I've asked them, I said, what do you want? Nobody has said we want the same thing. So somebody will say we want a confederation. Somebody will say we want federalism. Somebody will say we'll see what we want, It's all up in the air. Now, in the process, what's happened? And I think this is where you tread dangerous waters, is that we'd love to say resistance here, liberate kare. Sure, some of them really are from the bottom of their heart, believe in the virtues of democracy.
Right.
Some don't, because the kind of money that is to be had now, conflict areas make you money.
Of course.
You cannot sustain armies and weapons and sophisticated training without money. A lot of these areas have become areas where there's extortion. There is, Myanmar has become the single largest hub of poppy cultivation.
Poppy cultivation, smuggling, crypto.
Smuggling, crypto, cyber scam industries, as well as synthetic drugs.
Right.
And the kind of money that syndicates are making is not a patch on what you can do overboard.
Really?
So the cyber scam industry, and I visited these areas, have moved to a place called Mayawadi, which is just across Mesot in Thailand. The compounds are like cities in themselves.
Really?
So they have supermarkets, they have ATMs, they have shopping malls.
It's the compounds.
Yeah, and by the rate of some of the NGOs that I met,
Wow.
they are calling it the single largest human trafficking event in the history of the world. At any given point of time, it is assessed that there are 200,000 people.
200,000.
I actually had the opportunity. I had to work very hard at this opportunity, but I had the opportunity to interview 3 of the escapees
Right.
from these cyber scam places. And the escapees means they had just gotten out.
Yeah.
So they were hungry and they were thirsty and they were completely rattled and they were Indians.
Right.
So I had a word with them. I actually interviewed them with the promise that their names will not be, ever made public.
Mm-hmm.
But they said that there's a lot of recruitment going on in India because we speak English.
Right.
And most of the scams are made in the English language.
Yes.
There are also a lot of people from Nigeria and all, but those poor kids don't stand a chance. At least the Indian government is really proactive. We've just rehabilitated, I think, 500 people that we'd taken out and we brought them back to India. But Telegram, that's where they get ads for employment.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually feel that they're going to other countries. They don't realize until they've crossed the border that they're in Myanmar.
Yeah.
A lot of them that you meet, they're only semi-literate.
Right. But they speak English.
They don't speak English, but they can type.
And they can communicate?
They can communicate.
Right.
But what happens is they have training centers there. So before you are actually employed, you go through a proper training. So it's almost like
So it's an enterprise.
It's an enterprise.
Wow.
So it's almost like, call centers with training. It's like that. So they go through this training, they're polished, then they're given certain scams. One boy told me that I knew that I was going to do love scams. So I had to trap women.
Wow.
And I said, you came. I said, why did you come? He said, I was in debt. My family was in debt. And we get paid almost 2 lakhs a month. So this is really good money for us. The other 2 kids feigned ignorance and they said, we didn't know why we were coming. But once we came here, we realized this is a really dangerous place and our phones were taken away and so on and so forth. On a funnier note, the reason that they managed to escape is because the English wasn't good enough, so nobody was willing to keep them.
इनको छोड़ दो.
So the agent, इनका agent होता है. Agent gets $2,000 per person. Now he wants to retain
that's big
that.
Money.
Yeah, that's big money.
Money.
Now if he's bringing 10 people a month, he's obviously making big money. So this guy kept passing them from one compound to another, saying, कोई तो ले लो.
Wow.
But luckily इनका English अच्छा नहीं था. So they managed to somehow escape. But there's another twist. A lot of people become a part of it.
Right.
So they themselves become recruiters.
Oh, okay.
So there has to be, even when they're rehabilitated, they're brought back, there has to be a great debriefing, a certain amount of, keeping an eye on them to see that they haven't become recruiters themselves.
Wow,
so this is just one of the industries that is there. Yeah. But of course, there is the methamphetamines, there's the heroin, there's all of this.
All of that.
$1.2 billion worth of methamphetamines was caught in Andaman Nicobars in a Myanmari trawler end of last year.
That's colossal money.
Colossal.
That's colossal money. So, in the end, so great to talk to you and get all this, you've been on the ground, so you know much more than anybody, who writes a book or, you possibly researches, whichever way it is. But, Rami, do you think that is there a great game being played in the Northeast? I also find this gentleman up our Western Front speaking that we will look at the eastern side of India to do this, that and the other. Do you think there's a great game being played here?
Look, I have no doubt.
Right.
I have no doubt that there is.
Right.
And I will not elaborate because we are on limited time and we'll probably have another chat again. But let me tell you why also. Let's not take, and I know a lot of even my dear friends in Myanmar, who belong to Christian denominations will disagree and not see a larger game plan.
Yes.
But that's because they're innocent, The fact of the matter is that there's always been a Western effort to create a Christian state on the northeastern borders.
Yes.
Let's not fool ourselves that hasn't been the case. NSCN what was their slogan for the longest time? And it's the longest running insurgency in India was Nagalim for Christ. It wasn't a secular Nagalim.
Yeah, of course.
It was Nagalim for Christ. It was a Christian state because there wasn't a Christian state in this part of the world for the longest time.
Yes.
Of course, later the influences came in Southeast Asia, but for a long time there wasn't anything like this. And why did they want that? They wanted that because it's obviously the basics are that it's rich in natural resources,
Of course.
but also it's a base to counter China. You're always going to want to look at countering China.
Of course.
But one of the things that I am concentrating on heavily now is also the game that's going to be played with the critical earth minerals.
Oh, yes.
Myanmar is a big hub for it. They've been selling to China. America wants a foothold in it. They're interested in it. There's been a recent thawing of relations for the first time between the Tatmadaw and the US.
Yes.
Where General Ling complimented Trump and Trump lifted a few sanctions.
True.
Also, the Bay of Bengal is something that the West has always had an eye on. Some of its islands, Coco Islands, is leased to the Chinese. 55 kilometers away, you have Andaman and Nicobars. Why would you not want St. Martin's? So let's not fool ourselves that there isn't this, we don't want to we've become so hypersensitive in this country about bringing religion in.
Yeah.
We don't want to bring religion in, but eventually that is also at times used for geopolitical contestations.
Of course.
And that is what's going to happen. And if you look at the areas, they are contiguous. Let me also remind you of Sheikh Hasina's very famous words just before her ouster, where she said that a white man approached me to carve out a Christian state that would consist of areas of Bangladesh and Myanmar and a third country. Now, obviously, the third country is India. You don't need to be, Superman to figure that out. Territorially, that's contiguous. And that's also where you have transnational ethnic ties.
Yes.
So it's a great possibility. It is in the works. There is going to be, a government can change, a government can come, a government can go. The deep state stays. And I think, one doesn't even need to be a very deep thinker to understand that there is a potential.
Get all this. And, what a pleasure it's been speaking with you on all of this and your in-depth analysis, and as I mentioned to our viewers in the very beginning, you are a practitioner, you're not a theorist. You've been there, you've done that. So it's been a great, session with you, Rami, and we hope to have more sessions on this. And I hope this great game is understood by all our viewers and everybody else who's a part of the decision-making calculus in times to come. And all I have to say is thank you for coming me on for the show. And we need to sit again and speak more about Northeast and get more into details and get more wisdom from you insofar as North.
But Anurag, before we end, may I just say that, when we talk about people in Myanmar, when we talk about people in Bangladesh, we must realize that we have a lot of good relations. And when we talk about certain disrupting factors or certain groups, these are groups. These are not representative of the majority population on ground.
Yes.
So we must be very careful not to alienate, the ancient, historical, civilizational relations that we have with these people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what Rami says is very clear. You need to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Absolutely.
And you need to understand it more holistically than to just do anything which is segmented and, just make something out of it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure it has been. Thank you very much.